talk about my friend Dr. O. I could talk about the fact that he's an experienced plastic surgeon. I can run down the variety of services he provides, everything from Botox to tummy tucks, liposuction, reconstruction after breast cancer surgery. But the real thing about Dr. O I love is that this guy has a bedside manner. This guy is so comfort zone oriented. He's going to take care of your psychological needs. When you're going through the trauma of having your body worked on, obviously there's going to be a degree of nervousness. There's going to be a degree of anxiety. I want you to call him for an appointment. Write down this number and do it right now, 773-527-5071. Reach him through the web if you want to at midwestprs.com. At Resurrection Hospital Professional Building. That's at 7447 West Talcott, Suite 308. The evaluations are complimentary, not a dime out of your pocket. I want you to schedule your appointment today. I mean, this cat drips with passion. Go see my guy, Dr. O. Why? Because he is simply the best.
This is the Dr. O Show, featuring news and interviews on the state of health with your host, Dr. Andre Ostrich.
Hey guys, it's Dr. O, and welcome to episode number 11 of the podcast. 11. It makes me think a little bit of Spinal Tap, right? 11. Why is it not 10? Because it's 11, right? That was pretty bad, I know. Anyway, today on the show we have a very special guest, Abel James Bascom. You may know him as the Fat Burning Man. He has a very, very popular podcast, which I would recommend that you listen to either on the iTunes Store or Stitcher, or go to his website, fatburningman.com, and you can download it there. Abel James is a rising star of paleo. He's a young guy. He's got this great, wonderful voice, this great, wonderful podcast with a lot of guests, and a lot of people know him, and he has a very interesting show every week, and I was very happy and glad to have him on my show. And we talked about a lot of different things, which you will hear coming up. Before we get into the interview, I just wanted to let you know we did the JDRF Walk to Cure Diabetes last Sunday. It was kind of a gray day, but it didn't rain until the very end. Then we got sopping wet because it just came down. The heavens opened up. It was a great walk. It's a wonderful walk, and I think there were several thousand people there at the lakefront, and it was a nice 5K walk Sunday morning. The leaves were changing, a little bit gray, but the temperature was good. And all in all, we raised several $1,000s for our team Ostrich, to help fund the research to help cure type 1 diabetes, which is juvenile diabetes. You know, they had some sandwiches and stuff after, and definitely was not a low carb, and it's sponsored by a lot of corporate sponsors that may or may not have a vested interest in a low carb lifestyle. In fact, a lot don't. You know, that's the thing we have to keep fighting for, guys. Whether you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, it is a disease of carbohydrate intolerance, and we have to start thinking of it as such. And that's one of the things that I am working on in terms of doing a podcast and doing a blog and getting the PR campaign out there and getting the information out there. And so are a lot of other people like Jimmy Moore and a lot of the researchers that are on his show. That you guys probably know about. You know, the fact of the matter is we're thinking of type 1 and type 2 diabetes as an insulin sensitivity problem. And in the case of that's type 2 diabetes, but in the case of type 1 diabetes, we're thinking of it as an insulin production problem. And really, you got to step one step back and think of it as a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. And we're all intolerant to carbohydrates at some level. For me, I think I can, now that I've lost all this weight, I can eat more carbohydrates. I can go into that fourth stage of what Dr. Atkins called the ongoing weight loss with a controlled carbohydrate approach. So I have still about less than 100 a day, and some days I'll have 150, maybe on the weekends. I might want to have some more fruit, or I know, I may have a piece of, cake. Usually we try to pick wonderful cakes because there's a bakery, I think I told you about it, called Three Tarts in my neighborhood. It's a great bakery. I'd love to go there all the time, but I can't. But sometimes you can get a flourless chocolate cake from there, and that's a good thing to do. I don't know if it's totally gluten-free because they got flour flying everywhere. It's a really beautiful bakery. And I can understand why wheat is addictive and all these pastries and brioches and wonderful things are addictive. They taste good. I'm a human being. I'm a realist. I'm not going to proselytize and lecture from the lectern, from the pulpit, and tell you people what to eat and what not to eat. That's up to you. But you got to have the good information to make the right choices. Because if you're making choices based on bad information, you're going to get bad outcomes. And so the good information that I think that is important to note is that at some level, we're all carbohydrate intolerant. Some people can't have more than 20 carbs per day. And some people can't have more than 100. And some people, maybe they can have 100 or 150. And I think it changes over time. I think as you age, you probably become less carbohydrate tolerant, and you have to reduce the carbohydrates as you age and replace that with more animal products that are, like fish and lean meats and things like this, and more fruits and vegetables. Leafy green vegetables, I'm a big fan of those because I think they have a lot of micronutrients which are important for your metabolism, things like sulfur, things like magnesium, and all the bioflavonoids and polyphenols and all these things we probably don't even know about. We haven't determined what's going on. And the fact of them all working together in something like one of our favorite paleo foods, kale. It's a great, great food. It's got a lot of nutritional density and a lot of magical things that I think are going on in there. And hey, you fry that up in some coconut oil and bacon, and maybe throw a few nuts on there. And if you're not carbohydrate intolerant totally, you can throw a few cranberries on there, which are delicious, just to give it that little sour touch. There's your recipe for the day, guys. I didn't expect to tell you about carbohydrate intolerance and all that, and my recipe of the day before we start off with our interview. But hey, we got a couple segments down right off the bat. Okay, well, let's go ahead and proceed with the interview with Abel James Bascom on the Dr. O Show.
All right, everybody, it's Dr. O, and today I have a very special guest. It's Abel James Bascom. You may know him as the Fat Burning Man. He is the host of the very popular podcast that you can get on the iTunes store called Fat Burning Man. Abel is a Renaissance man, without a doubt. He's a musician, he's an author, he's an entrepreneur. He's also got GQ Good Looks, and he's here today to talk about his new book, The Wild Diet, as well as some of his thoughts regarding paleo and how he got into nutrition, because he's got a very long pedigree in a lot of different things. He's dabbled in neurosciences, and he's an athlete. He's a physical culturist, as they would call them, or just in old school terms, it would be jock. And he's got a lot of things to talk about today, and I'm very happy to have him on the show. Welcome, Abel.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. O.
It's great to have you here on the show. So I'd like to start off a little bit today talking a little bit about how you got into health and nutrition, and maybe you could just tell me a little bit about your story.
Sure. So I've always been interested in being healthy, so I had that going for me. The problem was what I thought was healthy turns out wasn't. Uh-huh. So from a very young age, I always was trying to take the grease off of my pizza with napkins and eating low fat and, just going for lots of healthy whole grains and keeping calories down, things like that. Sure. And I could kind of get away with that for a while when I was a teenager, but things started to go wrong when I was in my 20s. I started gaining a lot of weight and had inflammation problems. I know my gut was just a complete mess. I didn't know it at the time. Mm-hmm. And so it was actually a fire. I lost my apartment and everything I had that kind of made me come to terms with myself and my life and re-examine everything that I thought to be, me or true.
Yeah, that's kind of an existential moment, no doubt.
It was, yeah. And so it was tough because I felt like I was fighting the world around me and just trying to kind of survive the situation. And so I was desperate to find something that I could really rely on. And what it was just focusing on my health. I decided that I couldn't really control anything in the outside world, especially at those moments, but I could control my health and how I treat my body. So I spent a lot of time with medical journals and reading old bodybuilding textbooks.
and this was post-college?
Yes, this was post-college.
Yeah.
When I really started focusing on it.
Sure.
And what I found was that the things that I thought were true my whole life weren't quite so accurate.
Isn't that the case with most things?
Oh man, it's crazy, isn't it? So that's really how all of this started. And then I started up my podcast, and I think it was in February of this past year, and it's just kind of gone bananas since then. And so I'm really enjoying the ride and trying to help as many people as I can get this knowledge that, it's out there, but it's buried under tons and tons of misinformation or disinformation or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So what exactly was your, enlightened aha moment? What did you come in contact, or is there any one thing in particular? I know you talked about you were interested in your health, your whole life. So, my thought would be that just try a little bit harder would be the conventional wisdom at what you were doing. What did you get exposed to that kind of changed your whole paradigm?
So I had been running my whole life. I had always been eating healthy, in air quotes. Mm-hmm. And, actually I went to my doctor's office. I had, my blood pressure was increasing over time. Every visit that I went in, they wanted to send me out with drugs.
Really? And how old are you, Abel, by the way?
I'm 28. 28.
So you were in your 20s when they wanted to put you on antihypertensive medication.
And this was actually years ago. This was, when did it start? I think I was 22 years old when they first wanted to medicate me. I never let them.
Wow.
But yeah, they first wanted to medicate me when I was, right out of college, a young guy who should be very healthy. And the problem was, the advice that they were giving me was, obviously you're not eating low fat enough. You should try to go lower. You should eat more carbs and you should run more. And this is, while I'm pretty much running marathons.
Right.
And eating super low fat. And it kept getting worse. So that was the final straw. And I was looking across the table at my doctor and I'm like, wait a second, my doctor is overweight.
Yeah, there are a lot of doctors that are overweight. I was one of them.
Oh, really? Well, yeah. That can be okay, but when the advice doesn't work for that long, it's just time to try something else. And so that's what I did. And man, the changes were instant. All of these things that I thought were just part of me getting older or part of my genetics or who I was, turns out that they weren't. It was a function of a bad diet.
Yeah. And so did you come across any work? I mean, because I kind of suspect that you're very influenced by the general concept of the Paleolithic diet. Is that correct?
I am.
Yeah.
What's funny about that, though, is that I didn't even really know it existed, certainly not in this form, until probably about a year ago. Mm-hmm. I knew I'd heard of the paleo diet and heard of the caveman concept, and I'd actually read the original book that Lauren Cordain wrote, and it was, low fat, high protein, no salt, no sugar, no caffeine, no fun. I'm like, this isn't me. Gonna try it. So I had no idea that this more nuanced approach existed with, especially when it comes to fat and saturated fat in particular. And I certainly had no idea about the online community that right now I'm very active in and absolutely love around paleo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then what were the steps that you took then specifically to change your health? What were the main steps that you took?
Actually, it wasn't that hard because I was always trying to be healthy anyway. So it was more just shifting what I was doing, trying to be healthy in one way to trying to be healthy in another way. And so the simplest way to explain it, I would say, was I went from eating tons of carbs to eating tons of fat, and also not being afraid of red meat, which I was for a long time. I was told to stay away from it. I thought that it was bad. I was on and off a vegetarian for a long time. So those were the main changes. And I started to incorporate, just one little thing at a time, started to incorporate some organ meats, whittling the grains out. I always loved popcorn, tortilla chips, and I just weaned myself off them over the years.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question. In retrospect, your vegetarian days, did you feel less healthy when you were a vegetarian, or did you feel more healthy, or what's your perspective on the times that you were a vegetarian in the past? I mean, now that you know what you know.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was on and off, and the reason that I would go off is because I just wasn't feeling quite right, and I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted. You know, you can feel good about yourself because you're not eating animals. And actually, I was feeling great about myself as a vegetarian until I read The Omnivore's Dilemma when it came out.
Yeah.
Which, if you folks listening are familiar with that, basically it tells you that all food that you find in the supermarket is bad, especially in some cases vegetables. And I'm like, man, what do I eat now?
Yeah, so he has a great chapter in there about the industrial organic sort of hoax that is being, promulgated. There's no tight regulation on that term, so you get basically a shadow system that exists that kind of fulfills the requirements in name only.
Right, and a lot of those organic brands that I don't dare mention right now are owned by the big guys, and there's a popular infographic kind of bouncing around the interwebs these days that shows you all of the connections between these companies, and it's pretty scary stuff. You can't trust organic as a label on a food, unfortunately.
Yeah. But, your journey didn't stop there, of course, and you decided to share all this knowledge with people. I mean, you started a podcast, and you're also an author. You've authored several books. Some are about diet and nutrition, and some are not. We talked about having you on a podcast in the future, talking about some of your work in regards to language, music, and the brain. But I want to talk specifically about, how you got involved with sharing these ideas with other people, and maybe talk a little bit about your new book, The Wild Diet.
Sure. So I writing a book was always something I wanted to do. And once I finished it, I didn't really, it was another challenge for myself to try to see how I could get it out there. And so I tried blogging at first and realized very quickly that there are probably enough health blogs out there.
Yeah, there are quite a few, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's hard to differentiate yourself or get an audience from the get-go. So I basically just tried everything. And I feel, especially being a musician, it's natural to kind of venture into multimedia. And so I've done some videos. That's what I kind of started doing. And then I just put out the podcast. And when I first started it, I was interviewing a few people who had lost at least 100 pounds and kept it off was my first set of interviews. And Jimmy Moore was actually one of the first people I interviewed. And he was great to come on a no-name show at the beginning. And out of there, I didn't really know what podcasts were, to be quite honest,
So just to clarify for the audience, this was your book, The Paleo Diet, that you were trying to market. Is that right?
So I actually have written different permutations of this book. Right now, the one that I'm releasing is the new edition of this main book that I wrote, which is The Wild Diet. And it's basically a distillation of everything that I learned that I thought would be important for other people to know. So
let's get back to talking a little bit about how you were building your audience. And you just mentioned you were talking with Jimmy, or you had Jimmy Moore on as a guest, and I actually had Jimmy on last week. And he's just a wonderful guy. He's very honest. He's brought a lot of good information, not only to my life personally, but as a physician practicing, because he has all these wonderful guests who've done high-level research. So, yeah, it's great. I totally agree with you on that regard. Having Jimmy on the show was a great boon for me as well.
Yeah, then I kept going. And actually, it was funny because I released it as a podcast, or I started recording in February. I can't remember if it's a little bit after that I officially made it a podcast, but Dean Dwyer, who's another popular blogger and podcaster, actually now, but he wasn't then, he sent me a screenshot of the top podcasts in the U.S. And this was a month after I released mine, and it was number 2 in the U.S. In health, right below Jillian Michael.
Yeah, I remember that's the first time that I got in touch with you, and I friended you on Facebook, is because I had heard some of the early interviews that you had done with various people. And, what I was so impressed about, first of all, you have a perfect radio voice. Like, that's the thing. Most people who have a radio voice don't have a radio face, but you have like both. You could be like an actor, rock star, which you kind of are. I mean, you're a musician in Austin, the music capital of the United States, with the wonderful musical festival that they have every year. And you have this wonderful voice. So when I heard it, I was like, you must be a pro. You must be some sort of a pro. So I didn't realize you were just some guy who's starting out and doing this wonderful work.
Yep, just sitting at my desk by the seat of my pants. I still have no idea what I'm doing.
Do any of us, though? You figure it out kind of in retrospect, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, no, so that's really wonderful. And so let's talk a little bit about the wild diet. Let's get into the soup and nuts of the interview. You have this new book, The Wild Diet, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Sure. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, and I didn't even realize how important this was at the time, but my mom has always been into a natural relationship with the body and medicine, and she's actually written a book about incorporating herbal medicine into clinical practice, which was kind of her shtick the whole time that we were growing up. So, I was raised on funny smelling balms and tinctures and all of that. And so using the foods and the herbs that are around us has always been something that I've been very close to. And actually, I'm in New Hampshire right now. I'm with my folks. And
how's the weather up there now?
It just got a little chilly.
Yeah, and I'm sure the fall colors are wonderful.
Foliage is great, yeah. So it's a trade-off. But I love that, the crispness of the air.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. But one of the things that we do here that is so cool and is kind of a lost art is we go out into the woods and we look for mushrooms or wild cranberries. We always get blueberries every year, strawberries, apples, and grapes, like all of these foods that grow on the land. You don't even really cultivate them. And they are so different than those that you find in a supermarket. They tend to be more tart, more fibrous, and usually have a lot more nutrients in them. And you feel great when you eat them.
Absolutely.
And so there's this concept, of course, of eating wild plants and wild animals that is that not many people are doing right now. But I think that that's really the ideal, because when you eat, you don't just eat a hamburger. You don't just eat a food. You eat a food chain. So the closer that we can come to having animals in their wild or natural environments, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's kind of what the book is about. I read it this afternoon. I skimmed through it, and there was some very good parts in it. But the first part of it is prepare your mind. So I can see what you're trying to get to. Get out to people is that it's not really a plan. It's a way of thinking about things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Glad that you said that, because that's exactly what I'm going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the whole idea of getting back to, the natural aspect of fruits and vegetables and, the food that we eat is a really powerful concept because, for instance, let me give you an example. My mom lives in Florida and she has an orange tree grow in her backyard, and she's brought over the oranges when she's visited us in Chicago. And I totally agree that the fruits they're smaller, they're tartar, but when you eat them, you feel like this buzz of energy that comes into you that's wild, no pun intended, but it's very different than eating an orange that you buy at Whole Foods that may have traveled 3,000 miles to get there while it was unripe.
Mm-hmm. And bred for sweetness, and bred for all of these things that have nothing to do with your health. Mm-hmm. Like the amount that are produced by each tree, the size of the fruit, the sweetness of the fruit, reducing fiber and just increasing the characteristics that make it transport well. And none of those things have anything to do with your health. And in fact, a lot of them can negatively affect the healthfulness of that fruit once it goes into your body.
That's right. That's right. And you do talk about that because, the next two sections of the book, you talk about, what you need to know and how to do it. So you give people not only a theoretical background, you actually give them practical applications on how to do this in real life.
That's what I try to do because there is so much information out there. You can jump down any rabbit hole that you want, and I've jumped down many. And so, with my educational background, it was very difficult to relearn how to write. And so I tried to write this book as I would speak to someone who's sitting right in front of me. And I'm like, look, this is all you need to know. You don't need to know all of the science behind it, but try it. See if it works for you. And I can almost guarantee that you're going to feel better. And so I try to make it conversational, practical, and hope that things that come out in the book don't bog people down, because it's, when you start to realize that the foods that are immediately available to you in fast food stores, supermarkets, and all of that, it's a little depressing that most of those won't make you healthy.
Yeah.
So I do encourage people to start slowly and move toward an ideal.
Yep, that's a good advice. And maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about your website, leanbodycommunity.com. And that's a website where people can actually get in touch with you to get specific advice about their specific conditions, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I started that up a few months ago, and it's been going great so far. And actually, it's mostly just because I really want to help people, but with the amount of emails and contacts that I get, it's impossible for me to actually respond and help people on a one-to-one basis. And so I needed to build this community where we could all interact. And so that's the idea behind the body community, and where I'm still kind of figuring everything out, but it's been going really well so far, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from more people who want to be able to get in touch with me and ask questions in particular about their conditions.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I want to ask you a few questions in terms of your personal inspirations in the paleo diet. Who do you look up to in not just the paleo diet, but in terms of your nutritional role models? Who inspires you?
Yeah, who inspires me? I always thought that it was fascinating that you look at, I don't like bodybuilders, but when you look at what they're doing, it clearly works in that application. It's visually, you can't argue with what they're doing, like burns fat, increases muscle. And yes, sure, some of them use, they're dabbling in the fringe, and so they use tons of and all of that. But I thought that was the thing that really shook me. And I'm like, is telling me this advice that's making me fat. You look at these other people and they can be complete meatheads, but what they're doing is working. So that's kind of where it started off. And then I really started dabbling in the fringes myself and looking at these people who are eating fried egg yolks for breakfast. And, of course, you can type in almost anything related to nutrition, and Mark Sisson's website will come right up. And so he's one of the ways that I found paleo the way that it is these days, and actually he calls it primal. Rob Wolf is another great guy. All these people, I've kind of become friends with over the past few months, which has been awesome. Met them at Paleo Effects and the Ancestral Health Symposium in Boston. And so I really read whoever is producing stuff that's kind of interesting right now. There's a lot of work around fasting these days, which I'm fascinated by, and I'm writing a guide to fasting right now as well. And actually, I'm recording a show right after this about fasting. So
cool.
Yeah. I kind of bounce all around from person to person. I think after a while, people start talking about the same thing. And so,
yeah,
around quite a bit.
No, I totally agree. And, you mentioned some guys like Mark Sisson and Rob Wolf and some of the other guys that are leading kind of the primal paleo movement. And, I have a great deal of respect for them as well because, what I really admire is just their optimism and their entrepreneurial spirit and trying to get the message out to people and having always kind of this sunny optimism. And you kind of embody that too. I mean, it's just, first of all, you have this wonderful voice that God blessed you with that just is very relaxing. I mean, seriously, if you ever fell flat on your face on the paleo thing, you could do voiceovers. You could be the movie guy doing all the movie background voices, to be quite honest with you.
Funny, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no. I love your voice. So, I mean, I'll probably say it 15 more times before this is over. But, I really appreciate your optimism, your entrepreneurial spirit. And this kind of gets me into my next question is that, as you might have known, and a lot of people know, there's some controversy in regards to paleo, at the Ancestral Health Symposium, and, they've said, is it too white? Is it too male? Is it too this? Is it too that? Sometimes I just really think that people are jealous because it just seems like you guys are having just so much fun.
There is a lot of fun to be had. It really is. Yeah, and there are the naysayers and the people who will always try to drag it down. But it's a thriving, vibrant community. And, more people need to start trying to live this way. It's such a great way to live when you feed your body well, you feel great. It changes not just your relationship with food and your body, but I think the world at large. And I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating that when it's necessary that you eat foods that are responsibly and sustainably raised from wild plants and animals, which requires a certain type of farming or environment, you have to change your relationship with the world. You have to start believing in responsibility and caring about what happens in 10, 30, 50, 100,000 years from now to the world. And actually, one of the reasons that I got into this is because I think it's a great portal to kind of change the way that the world is going, which clearly isn't sustainable. And so if you change your relationship with food, you can start to see what's going on with a different pair of lenses, I guess.
No, you absolutely. And one of the things is you're a direct agent of that change. It's not just that you're making some sort of a policy in a legal setting or in a political setting where you're making deals and all that. You're becoming the direct agent of that change, and there's something very satisfying about it and very visceral about it because this is food you eat, and we all need to eat to survive. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Abel, I want to thank you very much for being on the show today. I'd love to have you on again. You've been so generous with your time, and I've really had a fun time talking with you. Once again, we had Abel James on the Dr. O Show. He's got a new book out called The Wild Diet. Abel, why don't you tell people how they can get this book if they'd like to?
Sure. You can hop on over to fatburningman.com, and The Wild Diet is one of the tabs that's right there, and it's not too difficult to find.
Wonderful, wonderful. And tell us once again about the Lean Body Community website that you have. It's a pay site where you can actually tell us a little bit about what you can actually get from that website.
Sure. So actually, right now, I have this kind of crazy deal that I'm not sure how long I'll be able to offer it, but I'm looking to really build up a good user base. So I'm offering all of my video training series, all of my books that come with the membership community, and 30 days of coaching with me for $1. And then after that, when you sign on, it's $27 a month to continue to get one-on-one coaching with me. And I also do members webinars where I answer different questions that people have about the way of eating or the way of living and just how to get by in this wild and crazy modern world.
Wonderful. Wonderful. He is Abel James, an author, entrepreneur, professional musician, a radio show host, and as you can tell by listening to this interview, an all-around good guy. Abel, thank you very much for being on the show once again. I wish you a lot of luck. And I would like to just tell everybody that if you'd like to get in touch with Abel James, you can definitely get in touch with him through his website. Make sure you do that. And, once again, it was a real pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks so much, Dr. O. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Hey guys, wasn't that a great interview? I mean, doesn't Abel have just this wonderful voice? I mean, it's like James Earl Jones, this deep baritone that's smooth, and it's great. I love listening to it, and we're going to have him on the show again in the next couple months to talk a little bit about music, because that's another one of his interests, as he talked about. I mean, he's a musician, and he does a lot of the music for his podcast. I think he does all of the music for his podcast. So we'll have him on in 6 weeks, because he's written a book about language, music, and the brain, which I'm reading currently, which is very interesting. And this is something that I'm very interested in as well. I love music. Actually, when I started blogging, I wanted to start off with a blog about music and pop culture and things that I was interested in. Things like, I love reading Chuck Klosterman books and articles. I wanted to talk about whether people thought Jack White was legit and what I liked about Jack White. I wanted to talk about movies that I had seen, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, all that stuff. I'm way into music, and especially, kind of rock music from the 1960s. I love Eric Clapton. I like the blues. I love the Chicago blues. I'm from Chicago. In fact, I was a DJ in high school, and that's my show. My show was Modern Electric Blues. It was Sunday nights from about 6 to 8 at a local radio station just down the street from where I'm living right now, where I grew up. And I spent about 2 hours to 3 hours every Sunday night, and we played, I had a We Three Kings segment, which is, if you guys don't know, that's Albert, Freddie, and B.B. King, three of the great blues guitarists. And of the three, my favorite is Freddie King. He's the Texas Cannonball, which kind of relates to Abel James being from Texas, deep down in the heart of Texas. And Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, another band from Texas that I love. So anyway, I think it's going to be a fun show, and I'm really looking forward to having him on again just to riff about music and talk about whatever comes to his mind. Okay, don't forget, today is Thursday when the podcast is published, okay? And then this coming Monday, October 22nd, we are planning to have a call-in show on free conferencing. And I'll give you the information how to call in on Skype, on your phone, and what you can do is become part of the conversation. What I'd like to do is have a question and answer session for about an hour, and the topic will be about skin health, reducing inflammation, and how you can have plastic surgery with the foods that you eat so you can get that glow and radiance and youthfulness to your skin, because that's an important thing. Your skin shows what's happening on the inside of your body. So one of my favorite phrases, and one of the phrases that I use for my practice, is that true beauty begins within. And what I mean is that, a lot of people say beauty is skin deep, and the fact of the matter is that as a plastic surgeon, I know that you can do a little nip and tuck, but if you do, guess what? And you're not healthy on the inside, and you've been smoking, and you're stressed, and you're, on a bad diet. You know what it looks like? It looks like you got plastic surgery. And some people like that. But you know what? It doesn't look that really good to me, and I don't like that pulled look. I don't like that stretched look. It doesn't look very good. And when people don't have the natural radiant glow from having an actually excellent diet, and if they're not eating well, meaning they're on a starvation diet, they're getting fat in places they don't want to get fat, and they're losing fat in places they want to keep fat, like their face. They get a very skeletal look when they're emaciated, this ascetic look that monks or religious hermits have, this really thin, saintly, ethereal, otherworldly look. I mean, I don't know how many synonyms. I really don't have a thesaurus in front of me right now, but that was pretty good. I got 4 or 5 right off the bat. Anyway, that's what the topic is going to be on October 22nd, 2012. 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll give you the information on the show notes, and I have a blog post about it. We're going to be talking about steps to better looking skin and health through the Paleolithic principles and ancestral health principles. I'll be answering your questions. And basically, I think they're about... you can go on, and I've tried to write this blog article many, many times, and I don't think you can write one blog article or blog post about healthy skin. You can give a few tips here and there, but the reality is you can talk endlessly about what helps your skin look better, what you can do to your skin in a natural way that is non-surgical, that involves health and lifestyle and nutritional modifications to make yourself look good and make your skin glow. And so I have listed here about 15 things, and I'll talk about some of them during the conference that we're going to have on free conferencing on Monday night, and I will republish that as a podcast. So the number one thing I think is to avoid grains and sugar, without a doubt, because those are pro-inflammatory. The number 2 thing is to supplement, and you want to supplement with vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids with a good antioxidant. The next thing I think is important is to eat fatty fish, so a few times a week, like 3 times a week, to get real omega-3 fish oils, plus all the other benefits of fish, such as a good amount of high-quality essential protein. Sleep regularly, get good sleep hygiene, walk a lot, don't run, don't do chronic cardio, as Mark Sisson has used that term, but don't exhaust yourself. Lift weights occasionally. Have a glass or 2 of red wine a week. Not every day, guys. Watch that liver. The liver, you don't want it running on empty or overrun. Drink plenty of mineral water and supplement with magnesium. Eat red meat several times a week that's high quality, like lamb and good cuts of beef. Eat organ meat occasionally. Try it once a week. Try to kill that sweet tooth by avoiding sugar, and if you need to take supplements like L-phenylalanine or Gymnema sylvestre to help break that sugar craving, you should go ahead and do it. I'm a number 11, if you were keeping count. Have fermented foods, meaning have your kefir, have yogurt, have that good Greek yogurt, have some sauerkraut, kimchi, and if you don't like any of those foods, take a good probiotic. Number 12, enjoy a good sauna. Sweat it out. I think saunas, and I've written about this, are very stimulating for the skin, very relaxing for the brain. They help you sleep. It creates a virtuous cycle. You can have a nice bowl of soup afterwards, resupplement and restock on all those minerals and fluids that you've lost, and you just feel great. I'll let you know, because I'm going to do the Russian sauna with my buddy Yuri here in when it gets cold here in December, and I'll blog a little bit more about that. So that's kind of fun, because that's a Russian sauna where it's totally for guys, and not to go on a big side tangent here, but you go there, you go in the sauna, you go in the cold, you have a hot, wet and dry sauna. You can go there and have a big bowl of, Russian soup, which is just all broth and bone broth and meats and root vegetables. It's really delicious. You can sit and watch sports. You can watch the basketball season as it unveils, which is always a lot of fun. And you just relax. You sweat it out and you talk, and it's a nice schwitz, as they would say in Yiddish, as my friend Jeff Pincus has told me about the old schwitz. Have nuts. is in number 13. So especially fatty nuts and a lot of high-quality vegetable fats, like stuff from cashews and macadamia nuts, coconut oil. And don't forget, have your butter and eggs as well. Those are nice short-chain fatty acids, especially in the butter, that'll help give you the energy during the day that you need and help your skin look beautiful, especially coconut oil, which has that wonderful medium-chain fatty acid known as lauric acid, which is found in high amounts in breast milk, but it's just like a magical short-chain, medium-chain fatty acid that gives you plenty of energy and is good for your cell wall integrity and helps your skin look great. Number 14, eat fruits that have clear colors all the way through, things like blueberries, things like strawberries. Have some pomegranates every once in a while if you are not carbohydrate intolerant. And don't forget, number 15, this is the last one, and I've mentioned it earlier in the show, leafy green vegetables. They're high in sulfur, high in micronutrient content, high in fiber. They're high in a lot of good things, and they're a great whole food. And kale yourself away, I love kale. But you know what? I joke about this with my wife actually all the time. She doesn't like things like mustard greens and collard greens, which I love because I love to slow cook those things and get them in some coconut oil, some bacon, and season those things up really nicely with some chicken broth in there added, and do all those wonderful things. I also love chard a lot. Chard is beautiful with fish. You know what, guys? I'm going to have to tell you that Dalmatian, because I'm from Croatia, by the way, and actually my dad is from the Dalmatian coast, and they eat a ton of fish. They eat a ton of oily fish from the Adriatic Sea, which is really, really a dense, nutritional fish because it's really salty. The salt content in the Mediterranean Sea is very high. I'm kind of jumping from place to place, I know. We'll be done here in a second, though. So I have to show you the recipe, which is done with mackerel. You make a mackerel, and you put this sauce on it, which is made with olive oil, garlic, and parsley, and it's all kind of lightly heated, and you pour that over, and you serve that with boiled chard and a few young potatoes. My goodness. That is like a typical Dalmatian dish, healthy, with a glass of nice red wine. That's what they drink out there. They don't like. They're not like white wine with fish, red wine with meat. Besides, mackerel is it's a bluefish. It's like tuna. It's really rich, so you can get away with something like a Pinot Noir or a light red wine, which the Dalmatian coast produces a lot of. I've been wanting to have a wine segment on this show as well. Boy, I give you everything today, didn't I? I wanted to have a wine segment on this show. I gave you a cooking segment. I gave you a nutritional segment, precursor to the interview show we're having. I just got about everything done today. Okay, well, that was a fun episode number 11. I'm going to sign off right now. Catch me next week, and don't forget, Monday, guys, if you have any questions, just contact me directly. I look forward to sharing all my information with you and answering your questions and learning from you guys as well, from your experiences. Thanks for listening once again. This is the Dr. O Show. Have a great week, guys. This has been the Dr. O Show, featuring your host, Dr. Andre Ostrich. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed the show. Music for the show has generously been provided by the Good Reverend Dr. Daniel Ivankovich and his band, the Chicago Blues All-Stars. ChicagoBluesAllstars.com. Download their free app available for iTunes and the Android Marketplace. If you like what you've heard today, please make sure to note it at the iTunes Store or in the comments section of Dr. O's website, MidwestPRS.com. Don't forget to listen to me and Jeff Pincus every Sunday night on the Living Large Show on AM 560 WIND from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, or listen to us live on the web at thepinker.com. Have a great week, everyone.